At least now I didn't have to come in on Monday
Get in there.
for an exam, so
Try
that was
it.
nice.
Where do here?
I still want to say the old one, Matt. Just have to read it.
Definitely. Yeah. Tuesdays, I only have. This is only 3 days a week though. So. Tuesdays, my schedule is really, really light, so I can catch up on a lot of work. I only have 1 class on Tuesday, so that's nice.
That's why the road was quick.
I'm
That could have been a really long drive.
No second block until fourth quarter, so then I have more time
Looked
to
like
work.
semi, couldn't shake 'em.
Okay.
I'll call the meeting to order.
Probably gonna be the only one.
First item is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mosel, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion changes? Not, I'll call for the vote. Agenda is approved. Our next item is a public forum. Anybody from the public want to approach the board? If not, we'll move on. Presentation. Welcome Mark Broderson from Taher and Lori from Taher.
Sounds like a 70s band, Mark and Lori.
Yeah, she's the singer. I just drive the car. So, well, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to come and visit tonight for a few minutes. So we've prepared an agenda just so we can kind of keep the thoughts straight, and so we'll try to go through it rather quickly. But we had I think it's been not quite a year, I think, since I made the last presentation. We got a little bit out of our queue, and so I usually do this in the fall. So to do it after the first of the year, we're maybe a couple months behind. But we certainly appreciate the opportunity to come and visit. So I just want to touch on last year. Last year we had a very successful year, and you probably saw the numbers of the audit reports. We have been continuing to expand the menu choices at all of the buildings. I'll talk about that in a minute. Our limited time offerings, I'll show you a couple slides about that. I'll explain what those are just so that you get a sense. The Harvest of the Month, we continue to make sure that we expose our stakeholders and students to a variety of fruits and vegetables, grains or herbs, depending on what the season is. Our Farm to School, we still continue to do that. We provide some products through Reinhardt, our master distributor. We're also receiving some local items out of, let's say one example would be the Rupert's, our produce company that comes out of Curry. And then we also do a beef finish product out of Redwood Falls. The MDE review happened last April at Parkside, and we're pleased that it went very well. So we had no infractions or any fiscal responsibility that was taken away. So those usually typically happen about every 3 years. So we'll talk about that again in 3 years. The next one would be just our goals for this next year, because I think it's important for you to know that as a food service program, we try to continue to do some things. One of them would be, and maybe Trish, we can maybe slide forward. The way I did it as a PDF. I apologize. I probably should have done it as a PowerPoint. So there you go. The Harvest of the Month. I just want to point this out. The Harvest of the Month, on the right-hand side, you can see that we start in August and we go through July. And we pick either a fruit or a vegetable and then either an herb or a spice. So here we are in January, and we have grapefruit, we have onion, and we have basil. And what we try to do is provide some fun information facts for students and families so that they understand the importance. Sometimes people have already consumed these. Sometimes we pick ones that they don't consume very often. It's a way for us to really educate them when they're in the food service or in the dining space as an extension to the curriculum, if you will. And then we usually come up with some specific recipe that will either feature either the fruit or the vegetable or the herb. The next slide will list the actual goals, I think. Oh, I might be a little bit ahead. There you go. Staff communication, in-service activities. I think it's extremely important that the food service staff goes through in-service just as you folks do with all of your certified and non-certified help. And so I've talked with Lori about that, and one of the things that she asked from assistance on is to have a session where we could talk to the food service team and how we communicate to our students. And so we're going to be doing that probably in the next several months. And we haven't made a determination yet if we're going to do it by building or if we'll do the team en masse. And there are some team building exercises that we can do. One of the things that we're also considering is having an outside person come in and through a different voice share that same message. So they don't always hear from Lori or they don't always hear from Mark, but they can hear from some other people as well. So we're going to try to do that. The next one is we're going to roll out our menu app in late spring. We created an app. You can download it, not yet, but you will be able to download it. We have it both in Apple and Android. And what it will allow anyone to do, a student or a parent or a stakeholder, is to be able to go in, look at the menu, and then also receive information through that app. And it could be calorie counts or nutritional information. You know, we recognize that everybody uses their cell phones constantly now, and we have to really aspire to that as well. So we've created this. We're in the process of testing it right now to try to work all the little nuances out. Some of the things that we can talk about in addition to the menu is allergy information, because I think it's extremely important that when people make a decision to come in and dine with us, that if they have a dietary restriction or need, that that's met and they know and have some assurances that we're doing that. And then we can also talk about either events or promotions. And then we have a variety of chefs that blog and talk about food all the time from the various locations that they're at, and so we'll include some of those as well. Implementing kids in the kitchen, I think, is extremely important, and so one of the things that I've tasked Lori with is how do we do that here at Marshall? In other words, how do we bring some of the food service back into the classroom? We work with the administrators on that. We have programs for the high school, we have programs for the middle school, and we have programs for the elementary. And they're all designed a little bit differently, and so that's one of the things. Another one is a social media presence for the food service, because we recognize that social media is used constantly, and as long as it's done appropriately, you know, we're excited about the fact that we can either, through the use of a social media platform, communicate to students in a manner that they're used to receiving outside of printed copies and things like that. So we're working on that. I think you had a board bite. I want to talk about that real quick. We're rolling this out now, which is an example, and I'll just go through this real quickly. We've piloted it in several of our locations that either on a monthly or maybe every other month, Lori would create for you a report, a real quick report about what is going on in the food service, so that you're constantly being updated about some of the stuff. We can talk about it, whether we have a chef visit or whether something's been going on with, let's say there was an activity within the school, you know, homecoming as an example, and what did we do to align ourselves with that event as well, and then talk about some of the stuff. And those are just some examples, so you'll be able to see that as well. We talked about the harvest of the month and then the healthy to a T, which I'll get to, I think, at the end of my presentation. So that gives you at least a little kind of a broad brush. I always like to talk about statistics because I think it's important for you to see kind of where the program is at just from some daily averages. So the first one would be our summer program that we did last summer, the summer breakfast. So I prepared a slide starting in 2016 and then all the way up to 2018. And you can really see the activity that's going on, that we are maintaining. We averaged about 94 breakfasts a day in the days that we operated the summer lunch program. And so we did a breakfast and a lunch format. There are other formats that we can do, but that's currently what we've been doing at Marshall. And so we're very pleased to see that those numbers are holding. When it comes to lunch, again, the 3-year, you can see that we're significantly up from last year and in 2016. So we serviced about 189 summer lunches, and so again, that fills a need. We'd love for everybody to come and enjoy a lunch, and we recognize that sometimes they can't for a variety of reasons. Maybe they can't get to the building, maybe they have other activities or something that's going on. But so we believe that those numbers certainly are strong and very good. Then when we look at the what we would call just the regular program, we prepared a slide to show you really a 5-year average on where the breakfast program is at. So back in 2014, we were just under 300, and currently year to date, and this would have been through, I believe December. I think it's through December. We're at 761. We're down just a little bit from last year. Last year, as you know, we started the Second Chance Breakfast, and so we got a lot of spike from that. And so we still continue to maintain it, but it's down just slightly based on our averages. The lunches that are paid free and reduced, so we look at that as a combined total. We're currently right now at 1860, slightly down from 1905 as an average from last year. But again, we're still pleased by that number, and you really can see that we've been fairly steady throughout the last 4 or 5 years with paid, free, and reduced. Equivalents or a la carte equivalents I think is important because obviously those enter into the mix as well. And again, you can see, now remember, the a la carte requirements changed the last several years, and so the items that we're allowed to serve as a la carte are very restrictive, and they have to follow very specific guidelines. And so, you know, as an entity, we want the children to enjoy a meal. But in the event that for some reason we serve a meal that they don't like, then they can make a volunteer selection on a la carte. And you can see that we've maintained that course fairly consistent over the last few years. And then just the a la carte dollars, which is the next slide, because I think it's important to find out what's going on. We had a high of a little over $1,000 back in the year 2015-16, and currently we're at 894, and that's up slightly from a year ago. So again, the trend lines are still fairly consistent. So then when you take the a la carte, which are the equivalents, and breakfast and lunch, and add them all together, we're about 8 shy from what our average was last year. So we're really still in the range, if you will. So you can compare that to enrollment totals to see what that does. But you know, over a 5-year trend, the trend line is continuing to go up, and I think that's important. Flavors of the World is, I just want to point out that we have a chef council that travels throughout the world, and what their purpose is to bring back to Lori and her colleagues menu ideas and some items that we can serve students so they get an experience of what some of the food is that's served throughout the world, not just the United States. And this just gives you an example of some of those, and we've obviously done some of those at the high school level primarily. I had talked about the culinary education for kids, and again, there are different ways to do that. Kids in the kitchen, a chef club, ProStart, which some of you are probably familiar with, FACS classes, and then nutrition education. And part of nutrition education is we mirror that with our corporate dietitian, who along with Lori would go into a classroom and then talk specifically about healthy eating habits, lifestyle changes related to food so that they understand that. And so we've got some examples. And again, as I mentioned early, that's one of our goals that we're going to try to accomplish here before the end of the school year. Communication is really important. Some of the resources that are available to Lori that she uses on a regular basis, I want to point that out because sometimes those happen behind the scenes and people don't always know that they're going on. Every month, Lori gets a menu committee newsletter that really talks, in addition to our cycle menu in terms of what we're doing as an organization, how does she enhance that in her particular location, and then what are some resources, either with our own recipes, with personnel that have already done it, with other locations that we're currently doing, vendor assistance. There's a variety of things that happen, and so that gives you an example. And then we give them some ideas because each month we try to look at a la carte in addition to our main menu programs and say, what can we do from an a la carte standpoint that would build some interest and drive some revenue as well? The one thing that we've experimented with this year and we've had very good success with is we've created YouTube videos that are associated with our LTOs, which are limited time offerings. Chef Brian will go and make a video about that LTO, and then we will broadcast that to all the locations. So Lori and her staff can watch it at their leisure. They can watch it numerous times, and he goes step by step on how to make that particular entree, and then they can replicate it. And we've had very good success with that. So we're very proud of that, and so I wanted to share that. We also still have the food service webpage, which I think is important, because if people want to access information, that's really one of the areas, not the area, but just one of the areas that we use. And then, of course, we continue to do the SurveyMonkey as well. And then finally, the Healthy to a T newsletter. What we did with this is we really designed it so that on a monthly basis, we could broadcast information to the community to talk about health, to talk about some of the stuff that we're doing in the food service program. It's written by a corporate dietitian, and it's really focusing on healthy lifestyle. And then what we do is we create a recipe so that families can take that in their own leisure and make it at home, in addition to having it be received in the dining room. And we've found that to be very successful. And so I wanted to share that because that's out there and available to everyone. So let me just look to make sure I think I have everything. So with that, we certainly appreciate our 32nd year of partnership. We're very excited, and I'll open it up to questions or comments.
I have one question.
Yes.
Flavors of the world.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you offer that? And how do the kids participate? How do you know how much to prepare the flavors of the world? Do the
It's
kids?
usually when a chef comes, and I just let them know, what we typically serve, a number. Like, when he comes, we usually serve like 150 for that certain line.
So kids do participate,
Yeah.
do try.
Yeah,
And the chef comes and prepares that with you?
great.
Okay.
And typically, Bill, we've been doing it at the high school level. As an organization, we're looking to how to bring that down into the middle school, and then ultimately at some point, how do we bring it to the elementary level as well?
How often do you do that?
He come in like this month, February 6th and 7th.
How many times a year do you offer it?
Probably 3 times, 3 or 4 times.
He'll be.
That's good participation. Yeah.
It is, yeah. No, we've had very strong participation. And all paid, free, and reduced students are all able to partake in that. When he comes in February, I believe he's doing the Brazilian stew over couscous, I think. So, and is he doing something else the second day? Do you know?
He did send me a recipe.
Yeah, I think he's doing something else that isn't the LTO, and it might be something that's been a favorite that the kids want to have back. He also will work in the kitchen to make sure that he works side by side. There's a couple things that sometimes we say, hey, can you make sure they're doing X, Y, Z, or can we have a little attention given to how we're making pizzas or how we're doing the salad bar, or a variety of things. And so he'll work side by side with them as well. Yeah.
So the kids know where it came from, what country it's from?
Yes, yeah, yep. And it's interesting, Matt, that you share that, because some of the comments that we're starting to receive is that communities want to know where their food is coming from and why we're doing something, and maybe the story or the narrative behind it. And I think that's just as powerful. So when Chris comes out, he really enjoys talking about why he's doing what he's doing and where in the world it came from, and why that culture deems that food to be important, and why we do as well. So it's very powerful. Yeah.
Is that presentation primarily for Lori and your staff, or is it also somehow given to students when he's here? Or?
He does it right when he's on the line. He'll have a conversation.
And
Yeah.
things like decorations and
Yeah.
stuff where he's been,
Mm-hmm.
that he's purchased,
Mhm.
decorate and talk to the kids.
Because the YouTube videos, my kids watch the Food Network
Mm-hmm.
nonstop. So I
Mhm.
just think they would find that kind of fascinating in a way to see how it's made on such a larger scale too.
Mhm.
Something,
Mhm. Mhm.
to get those messages out to the students
Mhm.
as an appreciation of what you guys do all day.
Mm-hmm.
for these kids.
Thank you.
Mark, I was impressed with your students from St. James and demonstrating that kids in the kitchen
Mhm.
concept. I just think that's fascinating how you can get kids to kind of buy into the program,
Yeah.
sell the program
Yep.
themselves, and then learn about the careers and the business side
Yeah.
behind food service. So
That came out of typically we see that sometimes come out of the FACS classes, but in St. James case, it came out of the health class, which was really interesting. And so the students had to learn about school lunch. They had to go and interview Lori's colleague, the food service director, to understand the regulations. They created some menus. They learned how to cost it. They learned how the dynamics of it, and then they wanted to create some food. And so that, and what you experienced at the school board convention was kind of a crescendo to that activity. So there is a video that I shared with Lori, and I'll send it to Dion so that you folks can look at it, because I think it's very, very interesting. So yeah, you bet. Thank you.
How are we doing on our negative balances? We haven't talked about that lately.
Yeah. So do you want to?
Yep, we looked at that, and basically compared it to last year at this time. We're pretty even with last year. Right now we're at $10,653. It's up about $674 from last year. We usually see a spike in January. I don't know if it's because of the holidays, mid-year, and then towards June we see a little downslide. We're going to talk a little bit more about some different things we can do. Lori and Carrie do a great job hopping on the phone, sending out information. But a couple of things we're hoping is with Jill's online free and reduced, that'll help get the applications out sooner, because one of the problems we have is the application gets done in November, December, and then those amounts we still try to collect, but it's hard to collect those. About 60% of our negative balance is free and reduced. So, but still try and collect those amounts. And then, yeah, we've talked about different things. We're going to try and run equal dates of previous years, so we get a look instead of a March to a January. But yeah, we're definitely working on it. And another thing that we'll probably ask the board is it's never going to be a zero. I think you've seen that on TV with other districts. What's a target amount? And that's something we'll pull some history to see what's the lowest we've been at. I do want to say that when we first really started looking into this back in 2015, it was 29,000, so it's down about 63%, which
I was thinking we were around 30,000.
Yeah, they've done a really nice job maintaining it and trying to get it as low as possible while doing their regular job too. And so, yeah, we're definitely looking.
One of the things that we continue to do, and Carrie does the lion's share of it, is we make personal phone calls. You know, we have other ways of communicating to the stakeholders to talk about it. We obviously talk about payment plans. We recognize there are some hardship, unexpected kinds of hardships that come up, and so that sometimes can cloud some of the data. But we make personal phone calls, and we try to be respectful and work with them so that they understand, and it helps. But it does take time, and so we're pleased that the numbers are down. As Dion said, we'd love to have it at zero, but the reality is, we don't. You probably hear in the national news, this is one of the most difficult things that school districts are facing when it comes to a school lunch program, is collecting on negative balances. And there's all kinds of opinions on both sides. And I think that the program that we have in place here at Marshall is appropriate and thoughtful and respectful, and we just continue to be steadfast and work on it, every day. So, yeah, exactly. So
if we'll maybe try and provide a semi-annual update.
Yeah, we can do that.
So you're seeing each little up or down, but at least give you twice a year a look at it.
Is it possible to see an aged balance of those two in terms of what's the oldest accounts payable? Do you know what I mean? In terms of, do you have like 5,000 that's, been owed for 6 years?
Right, exactly, yeah. And
you know what I mean?
Deanna and I talk about that, and
yeah,
we can provide that. We can go back into that history, can't we, and pull. We can isolate what is
How old the accounts are.
Old debt versus, I think we can. Yeah, we'll
I just asked that question from a standpoint of donations and different other community sort of efforts to help with some of those.
And in fairness to transparency, the ones that never reach back out to us and never tell their story unfortunately, there are times when we have to send to collection to at least get that process started. That is the absolute last resort. You know, we want children to eat first. That's our primary purpose in what we do. But we also have to be good stewards of the monies that are given to us, and so we at least try to make those outreach. And you know, unfortunately, there are a few that go to collection. So, but for the most part, people, you know, are willing to at least try to set up some kind of a payment schedule. Yeah. We haven't, no. And the building administration and Lori work really well hand in hand on that. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I can just send a thank you to Mark and Lori as I fit into this position. They've been such a great help and quick to answer, quick to respond. And thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Mark and I go back to day one.
We do. 29 years? For me, at least, yeah. So, long time. No, we're proud of that. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lori.
Our next item is the consent agenda. I will need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Anybody, a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Aaron. Any questions on the consent agenda? Not, I'll call for the vote. That is approved. Financial report. Mr. Karen.
Nothing really to report, just kind of was looking back. Bills this month compared to last month are about $221,000 lower. It's basically due to the timing with the break in December, but we're right in line with what last year's was. So just ask for you guys to approve the $1,792,102.54.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second, you made it, done?
Got it. Got it. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. The bills are approved. Thank you. Do you have any comments on the treasurer's report? Any questions?
No, not really. Each month we go over the budget, and everything seems in line with previous years and percentage-wise for the year.
Very good. Board forum. Anybody from the board have any updates or reports or comments?
We had the Lincoln Lion Children's Collaborative last week. And one of the items of business, we approved a request from Kari Ellers and I think it was Carrie Loft for ELL unit for $2,600 to do some collaborative work with parents and families of our EL students. Main focus being a night at the theater, at the movie, and then discussing our summer programs and those kinds of pieces, just to connect with. Their goal is to reach the families of 350 students. We gave $2,600 to that cause from the collaborative.
At the MSBA convention on Thursday, I had an opportunity to attend a breakout session that I thought was very interesting as far as dealing with how to prevent violence in school. So much of what we do right now is, I think, in response to violence, and I think hearing some ideas and some things on prevention of that I thought was very useful, very interesting, and just kind of something that was kind of of note. I thought it was put on very well by the Bertha Hewitt School District, and I think they're doing some really interesting things about encouraging teachers to build one-on-one relationships with and kind of reach out to maybe, for lack of a better term, troubled students, just thought it was really interesting and really worthwhile. So I just wanted to mention that.
Community Services Advisory Board is meeting in a couple weeks with a consulting to discuss improvements to our aquatic center, which has needed updates for a while because people are going to different towns to go swimming. So anyway, we're going to get the ball rolling on what we can do to improve our aquatic center here in Marshall. So that'll be happening this spring and summer.
When is that meeting?
When?
Yeah.
It's the February 6th. 5th or 6th, whatever Wednesday that is.
6th.
Huh?
Sixth.
6th. Thank you. 'Cause she's on it with me. Anything else? Okay, moving on to the administrator's report, Mr. Munson.
So a couple things from each report that I just spend a little bit more time on. In my report, I just wanted to let everybody know that we have received communication back from the Minnesota Department of Education about the 2 school safety grants that we received. And we're just, Deanna and I actually are going to meet later this week to put together the information that they require now moving forward. I think honestly we have the majority of it already in our application, but that took a little longer to hear back from the MDE than we would have liked, but we're now progressing with whatever their next steps are and hopefully get the total thumbs up from them in the very near future. And as all of you know, the legislative session is underway. As a goal for the board, you chose advocacy, and I think it's really important to get out there and when you have opportunities to advocate on behalf of our students and our families and our district and community. There's going to be a lot of talk, I think, in the next 3 months about funding and different aspects of it, not just the per pupil amount, but also special education cross-subsidy, which is certainly applicable to us, the voluntary pre-kindergarten and school readiness plus. Will that funding continue to be available for at least the districts like Marshall who have received it before? So just kind of get ready for that rush of when we need to reach out to our legislators and what we need to communicate. And I'll certainly try to keep you abreast of what's going on. But you should get information updates from MSBA and MREA, and I'll also share some with you from the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. In Darcy's report, she really focused on the PBIS program, and it was good to see that behavior referrals are being reduced, maybe because of PBIS. That certainly is the goal, so that was good to see that information from her. In Jim's report, he talked about various local assessments, I believe the BAS and the NWEAs and what they're used for and what they are. And he also shared information about some of the recent events that have been happening at Westside. In both Mary Kay's and Brian's report, they talked about registration for next year. So on January 31st and February 14th, in the middle school, they'll start or work forward with 9th grade registration. And then Mary Kay also, as usual, did a really nice job sharing information about middle school groups and competitions, teams, and opportunities that the students have and how they're doing and what they're involved in. In Brian's report, in addition to registration, he also shared information about week 15 academic data and talking about the percent of classes passed, and that seems to be trending positively, which is always a good thing. Chad's report for Maytech, today we had 5 mid-year graduates that we'd like to congratulate and certainly wish well to: Eric, Caitlin, Devin, Diego, and Alexis. I think that number is about where we have had in previous years. Obviously, we'll have a higher number in the spring, but congrats to those 5 individuals as they move forward. And then Chad also shared that he is forming a student success team that's going to do some problem solving and hopefully provide some structure to help students and families and teachers and staff members as well with different challenges. Bruce's report, winter activities participation numbers are steady, and actually I think there was a net slight uptick, if you will, in those numbers. And we should congratulate Ashton Eben and Nick Dunn as they are this year's Minnesota State High School League AAA nominees from MHS. And every school has the opportunity to have a male and a female nominee for that award. So they will advance to the regional level, where they'll be reviewed by a region committee. Beth Ritter's report, she provided updates regarding things happening in the new teacher center and some days of training, and then also shared information about a mid-year check that will soon happen with peer coaches, just to get some feedback and make sure that things are going well and we're meeting both their needs and also the needs in the professional learning communities. Jeremy?
Could I have a question on that? With her report, is she asking for an additional coach next year?
A peer coach?
No, she talked somewhere when I read it earlier.
Yeah, I think she was part of the teaching center for the new teachers.
A new teacher coach? I thought I read it in a report somewhere that we would need another coach. Did anyone else catch that? I'm not catching it.
Yeah, she said with that being said, having an additional coach would be needed to continue the support. New round of support that we're, that's something that we'll visit with Beth about. Beth's position is being paid with staff development dollars. That's so, and so we'll have to take a look at that when we pull our budget together, which will be a finance committee discussion in February, I believe, perhaps as early as February.
So she is requesting an additional position there.
I suppose you could look at that as a request, Bill. I think she's basically saying it would be nice, but yeah. In Bruce's report, I already said that, Beth. Jeremy, we had training on January 2nd about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and also a variety of strategies to help support our EL students. And the feedback that Jeremy is getting in the PLCs that he's observed, they're doing really good work, and he referenced high-level conversations, which is really good. That's what we want from our PLCs. In Scott Vandermillen's report, City of Marshall was recently recognized as a bicycle-friendly community, and Matt talked about how MCS staff and the advisory board will be meeting soon to talk about future needs at the outdoor aquatic center. So, ladies, we'll start with you, and then Dion, Amran, and Aniso.
Yep. There you go.
I had the Marshall Middle School and the Parkside Elementary report. Test days coming up for Marshall Middle School on January 10th and 11th. That's the NWA math test. January 22nd to the 24th, that will be the NWA reading test for all grades. Thursday, boys and girls basketball team had a game at Pipestone. Friday, there was no school. Monday was staff development day. Thursday coming up on the 31st, that will be conferences for the middle school. On Parkside Elementary, Friday, there was no school. Conferences for quarter 2 will be on Thursday, the 24th. A program loved by students, our Project Success, and is developed to enhance the students' ability to do work and communicate with other students, and is also available for all grades, starting from Parkside Kindergarten, grade 3rd and 4th, and the middle school. Due to the school closing on Friday, January 18th, semester 1 was continued till today, and semester 2 will be starting tomorrow on Wednesday, January 23rd. The makeup day will be on Friday. It will be on Monday, February 18th. That's all I had for the report.
And then at the high school, they had cocoa and cramming last week on January 15th. And I talked to some Link crew members, and they said it was very successful. And compared to past years, they feel like they've improved on a lot of things as they looked at what they could do better in past years. And they had many prizes donated, so they had door prizes for the freshmen who showed up, and Anissa said her sister got a lot of gift cards. So that seemed like it went well as well. The Speech Spectacular, this is the 19th annual one, and it's sponsored by the Carr Family Foundation. About 65 to 70 team members will be competing from Marshall, and it's a 2-day event from the 25th to the 26th. And it's open to the public, so if you would like to come, it's on Friday afternoon to the evening and all day Saturday till like 5 p.m. And it's one of the largest speech competitions in the Midwest, and about 1,200 people come to the Marshall High School and the SMSU, and those are the two campuses they use, and then they have a shuttle between the two that they use. And then at Maytech, like Mr. Monson commented, there was 5 students who graduated this year, so congratulations to them. And then tomorrow, 9 students will be taking their CNA certification tests, so good luck to them. And they'll have taken classes all semester, and they're just finishing up their clinicals at a nursing home in Minneota on January 16th. And so conferences at Westside is on January 29th and 31st, and both of them start at 3:45 right after school.
Thank you, ladies. Dion.
I just want to touch on a couple of things in my report. Health insurance, every 2 years we have to go out to bid for that, so we're in RFP right now. Final bids are taken, or will be received on March 7th. The insurance committee will have an overview of that on the 14th, and then it'll be presented to you guys hopefully on the 18th of March. And then also the roofing project, we've had a little shift. Contractors asked if they could have a little more time to put their bids together, so the bids will be due on the 29th, but it didn't really delay anything because we're still looking at February 4th to present to you guys with who we'd like to present it to.
Thank you. Next item is discussion, the first review of policies 511 and 518 through 523. Any discussion or questions on those policies?
One thing on the student fundraising and looking this over, I think this is a good policy, first of all. It's good to have some oversight and some protections for our students, but one question I had, does it necessarily need to come to the board level? Do we feel confident that we could give that authority to our administrators and our superintendent to approve student fundraising requests? It's just a thought I had.
Or these are fundraisers just for
School sponsored.
Sponsored. So it wouldn't include booster clubs, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's really up to what you as a board want. Would I be okay with that? Sure. I think just adding another layer of awareness and making sure that we have a handle on fundraisers would be a good thing. So we can make that change if that's the will of the board to do so.
Would it impact timeliness, since we're only meeting, we meet twice a month? Hopefully if people are able to plan ahead of time, but.
I would liken it to our field trip policy. If people do plan enough in advance, we're able to meet the timelines. But would it be easier, Bill? Yeah, it would, without board approval.
I still appreciate the idea of the board being informed of the fundraisers, though, particularly for constituents who may say, what's this all about, particularly when you do have your activity fees and then the booster club and the fundraising.
Businesses on Main Street are getting it all the time.
They do.
I do agree, and as I was saying, but I just think that in terms of as Scott said, the layer of oversight, just to make sure the board is informed of what's being requested and done, I think there's some value in that.
Yeah, and I think we can accomplish what you're talking about, Sarah, under Roman numeral 5. We'll report to the school board at least annually on basically what's going on, which we haven't done in the past. So we're pulling together a list now, and I envision it being in spreadsheet format, and winter if a new one were to be added, whether the layer of the school board approval was included in the policy or not, but when a new fundraiser was approved, we would just add it to that list. That would become part of an annual, here's the list of what is done at each site and what it's for. So am I hearing you'd like to have the school board check taken out of there, approval taken out of there? Would you be all right with that as a group? Just sort of a head nod if you're okay. Sounds good. And we still have 2 more readings, so you'll see that next time.
School board goals progress update. This just shows what we've done so far this year as far as advocacy. Any questions on this, or big enough font that we can barely read it?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. But I see everything is included of what we did this past week, so keep working on that. Next item is an action item, approval of a resolution relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contracts, following teaching contracts. I'll make a motion. Thank you, Bill. Any further discussion?
So just for informational purposes, with the transition from what I'll call the previous licensure system to the tiered licensure system under PELSB, the Professional Educators Licensing Standards Board, we now have level 4, 3, 2, and 1 tier 1 through 4 licenses and out of field permissions. So what you're seeing on here is primarily out of field permissions and tier 1 and tier 2 licensed individuals, where there's a lot of questions, admittedly, but what we're being told is that those individuals we need to non-renew because they're not appropriately licensed fully, may be a better word, to teach in the positions that they're in. So we need to non-renew them. We will post the positions. In many cases, we need to have that posting available for 60 days. Used to be a couple weeks, now it's 60 days. And if we don't have any tier 4 or tier 3 licensed individuals, then we would hope to be able to bring all or many of these individuals back to their current positions for next year and or beyond, assuming that they're able to again get another tier 1 or another out of field permission type license. PELSB, if just as a side note quick, hopefully all that makes sense, but PELSB is proposing more changes to what they do. What those changes are, I don't know for sure. We're trying our best to wade through them and figure things out and just do what's best for obviously our students, but certainly our staff as well. We want to take care of our staff as much as we can, certainly.
Excuse me, this doesn't seem much different from when we grant variances.
It's not. We didn't grant variances. The MDE did, or the Board of Licensing. It's very similar, Bill. I think the big difference is when we used to non-renew the contract of someone who was on a variance or community expert license or whatever, we would have to post it for typically 2 weeks, and then we could bring them back if we wanted to. Well, now that timeline has gone to 60 days. So we hope they stay around.
There was, I know, in our meeting with legislators on Thursday night, there was some concern expressed about that very issue, being able to keep, potential teachers, are they going to stay or are they going to move on? So, I mean, that's a very valid concern and shared by many of the area school districts, as we heard on Thursday evening.
Like I shared with Tricia this morning, that Pellsby and the new licensure system, I believe, was designed to help schools, to help candidates get licenses easier. I don't know if that's happening. I'd give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it is. But I think it was also designed to help schools in this 60-day waiting period. I do not believe helps schools. Because if you're any individual on here, you have opportunities elsewhere. And we have to wait 60 days to bring them back. That's problematic, and I think that's another advocacy topic. You got to make this right for folks, and I don't know that the way that it is right now is right, quote unquote.
Are we?
The purpose was to help districts fill vacant slots.
Yeah. Are we?
Counter to that.
I agree, Bill.
Are we ahead of the game by issuing these non-renewals at this point, or is this a calendar? Is this a designated time?
No, typically we would do this, I would say, in February or March, but because of the 60 days, we felt like we needed to do it now. It's not ideal to.
By doing this early, our clock is ticking sooner than others.
At least people stay in the position they're in.
Absolutely, you bet.
If these individuals are working on getting a Tier 3 or 4 license, and we have a Tier 3 or 4 license apply, are we forced to hire the new application, or?
I wouldn't say forced, Matt.
We don't have to.
Well, we're strongly encouraged, but we're not mandated to do so.
We are required to provide a description as to why we didn't hire the Tier 3 or 4.
Okay.
We applied for a out-of-field position or a Tier 1 or 2 license.
Sure.
And that's where the application process is to provide that description as if we had any Tier 3 or 4 candidates and why we didn't hire them.
Okay. Anything else? We'll call for the vote.
Each of these persons will be spoken to by their administrators, or have been already?
They have been.
Okay.
Anything else tonight? If not, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.